Welcome back. I'm Melissa Harris-Perry. Demonstrators continued protest last night, despite the midnight curfew established by Missouri Governor Jay Nixon. Despite assurances by Missouri Highway Patrol Captain Ron Johnson that tear gas would not be used on protesters, post-curfew demonstrations were met with militarized police officers who did deploy smoke canisters and tear gas into the crowd. 7 protesters were arrested, charged with failure to disperse. After 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot to death by a local police officer, one of the first things we learned about this relatively small city of 21,000 people is that although more than 2/3 of the city residents are African American, its police force and elected representatives are overwhelmingly white. Only 6% of the police department's 53 officers are African American. And as MSNBC's Zachary Roth reported, though whites make up just 29% of the city's residents, 5 of Ferguson's 6 city council members are white, as is Mayor James Knowles. And 6 of the local school board's 7 members are white. Now, those demographic realities don't necessarily indicate conflicting interests between community and leadership. But at yesterday's press conference, the highest-ranking elected official in Missouri, Governor Jay Nixon, did something that did suggest those wielding political power over the people of Ferguson may be profoundly out of touch with their constituents.
To protect the people and property of Ferguson today, I signed an order declaring a state of emergency and ordering the implementation of a curfew in the impacted area of Ferguson.
Joining me now is State Senator Maria Chappelle Nadal, whose district includes parts of Ferguson. Next to her is the former mayor of Ferguson, Brian Fletcher. Nice to have you both with us.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Mr. Fletcher, let me ask you this. Do you think that last night's curfew accomplished the goals that Governor Nixon had for it when he established it?
Obviously not.
So,
There's still violence after the curfew, so it did not accomplish what Governor Nixon wanted to accomplish, obviously.
As a former mayor of Ferguson, I want to ask you something that I actually asked the state senator who's standing next to you yesterday, which is, what are we in the national media, those of us sitting in a studio in New York, what are we getting wrong about your town? What do we not know or not understand about your city?
I'm glad you asked that question, Melissa, because that isn't being asked by the media. Here's a couple things I keep hearing in the national media and local, for that matter. You just yourself talked about the fact that there are only 3 African-American officers on our police department. Let me take the opportunity to explain why that is the case. Within our community, we have 67% African-American citizens, all right? We have tried, myself and the current mayor and the past, the current police chief, to hire more African-Americans. I would tell you this. If an African-American or woman, for that matter, because women are not fully equal on the police departments either, if any of them would go through the police academy and graduate, they are immediately snapped up by St. Louis communities. As a matter of fact, when we do hire African-Americans, they are normally enticed by other communities away from the city of Ferguson and other cities by the cities in the St. Louis area that can pay more. I would argue that any African-American that goes through the academy would have an immediate job for life. I am hearing repetitively by leaders outside of the city of Ferguson that we need to hire more African-Americans. I would challenge them, please give us a list of academy qualified African-Americans or women, for that matter. I would challenge them. They are unavailable. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, okay, so I just want to give the state senator an opportunity to respond to the idea that the reason that there are an insufficient number of African Americans and women on the Ferguson police force is because they simply are not a sufficient and qualified pool available to be hired.
Well, here's what I would say to that, Melissa. I look at other police departments, and I represent several of them, and they have been very aggressive in seeking African Americans as well as other races and women to be on their police department, In University City, for example, we have made a concerted effort in our community to make sure that our police department is reflective of our community. If you look at the city of St. Louis, they have done a superb job in making making sure that the police department looks like that community. And so I think many times people make excuses. Send me a resume. I think that's an excuse. I think that what we should be doing is making sure, one, we have people in the community that know that it's a wonderful opportunity to work on the Ferguson Police Department. But also, I know that I've gotten phone calls and inquiries from police officers and other departments that actually want to come to Ferguson because they do pay more. And those folks who I've talked to, Melissa, are African American.
Mr. Fletcher, I want to also ask you a little bit about the elected leadership, because although the police force is
Melissa, I didn't hear you.
Sure,
Melissa.
I want to ask you a little bit about the elected leadership, because the police force is hired, but the leadership is elected. And I'm wondering, over the course of the past week, do you think the elected leadership from the local all the way up to the governor has served the people of Ferguson well?
Yes, I do. Let me take that issue as well. We have had 2 African-American councilmen in recent times. The reason they are there, we had resignations among white councilmen. The council actually went to active African-Americans in the community, asked them if they would accept an appointment to the city council, with the only thing they requested is that they run for the next election on their own. Both of these gentlemen, appointed by the city council, were elected in their own right against white candidates when they ran. It is difficult in getting African Americans to run for elective office in our communities. Now, the school board does not pay any salary. The city of Ferguson, the council person gets $250 a month. All right? It is difficult. Now, I've been very active over 30 years in elective office here. I have personally held voter registration drives. I've helped individuals like Maria in the past get elected. I've been very active. We have sought as much as we possibly can. I would ask for Maria, if she's ever had a name of an African-American person that wanted to be a police officer. I have personally never been contacted by an African-American elected official about anyone that wanted to work for our police department, ever.
State Senator, would you agree that this is the reason that there are so few African-Americans in elected leadership? And would you agree that the elected leadership has done a good job of representing the interests of the people of Ferguson over the course of the past week?
Absolutely not. Here's what I would say to you. I've been at Ground Zero, both A and B, since day one, actually. And the only elected official that I have seen at Ground Zero is a councilman who is African American. And it's a privilege to have him on the ground. But even at the state level, many of the representatives that I have in my Senate district who are African American have not been at Ground Zero at all. And that's one of the disappointments that I have. And as far as it comes to being paid for an elective office, it's not about being paid. I, too, serve on the local school board in University City. I don't get paid because I believe it's a volunteer effort on my part in my spare time. There are a lot of African Americans who want to serve in elected offices. We had a great example of that this last April, when there were at least 4 or 5 African Americans who were running for school board in the Ferguson-Florissant School District. And out of those, only one of them made it. And there was a huge issue this year because the only African-American superintendent for a school district that has all white, Caucasian school board members, he was actually fired. One of the leading African-American superintendents was fired by an all-white school board this year, which has created vast controversy in this community. And I would like to go further in that, saying, Melissa, there is a disconnect. A lot of people like to have the perception that everything is going fine and hunky-dory, but that is not the case. There is an underlying issue in this community which has existed for years. And if we are not open about it and transparent about it, and Brian is my friend, and he is someone who I do like talking to, but there is an undercurrent that's going on. And I think that most elected people, until they get to Ground Zero, they are not going to know what's really on the minds of the people in Ferguson and the greater majority of this region.
Melissa, I do want to correct one thing. Maria said, please. Unless we respond to this.
Former Mayor Ferguson,
the superintendent was not fired.
Former Mayor
he
Ferguson.
Resigned. That is a fact.
Okay. Former Mayor Ferguson, I'm sorry. It is just about being, about being out of time. I'm sorry, not Ferguson. Former Ferguson Mayor Brian Fletcher in Ferguson, Missouri. Also, State Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal in Ferguson this morning. I do have to cut you off only because of time here. I will say that clearly the two of you have rapport as individuals, but that the question here is about these issues of structure. I do hope, all of us deeply hope, the underlying issues can be addressed because the people of Ferguson are clearly hurting and asking for justice from all sides at this point. Everyone, stay right there, because how two people can say the same thing and get very different results is next.
Working in a coordinated fashion.
Excuse me, Governor, you need to charge that police with murder. That will bring peace.